What if I told you that everything we thought we knew about the fall of the Bloodline was a lie? What if the walkouts weren't betrayals, but chess moves? What if the silence wasn't weakness, but strategy? What if Roman Reigns never lost control, he just let us believe he did? This isn't a fantasy booking. This isn't a rumor. This is a bombshell straight from the backstage halls of Monday Night Raw. Because last night, in the shadows behind the curtain, far from the flashing lights and roaring fans, Roman Reigns, yes, the tribal chief, was spotted backstage, not alone, not lost, not broken. And with him was Jacob Fatu. A name whispered in wrestling circles like a coming storm. And together? They weren't talking. They weren't laughing. They were plotting. Because they didn't show up to fight in the ring. They came to start a war. Let's rewind for a second. Because to understand what this moment really means, you have to go back, not to last week, not to WrestleMania, but back. Back to when Jimmy Uso turned on Roman. Back to when Jay walked out. Back to when Solo Sikoa started making decisions without looking to the chief. We all saw the pieces fall. We saw the bloodline crumble like an empire left without a king. Or so we thought. What if that collapse was just an illusion? A distraction? A calculated move to go dark, disappear. Go silent long enough to catch everyone off guard? Because that's exactly what it's starting to look like. The bloodline never died. It went underground. In military terms, there's a tactic called tactical silence. It's when a unit goes off the radar, not because it's destroyed, but because it's planning something devastating. And now we know, the bloodline wasn't dead. It was underground. Evolving. Changing. Waiting. Roman Reigns didn't lose control, he gave the appearance of losing control. He stepped back not in defeat, but to rebuild something more dangerous. And who better to relight the flame than Jacob Fatu, the one man who was never in the bloodline to begin with, because he was being saved for when it mattered most. Think about it. You don't bring a war dog to the table for diplomacy. You bring him when you're ready to burn the whole damn house down. This isn't a classic wrestling comeback. There were no camera cuts. No pyro. No triumphant walk down the ramp. Roman didn't walk back into WWE like a fallen king reclaiming his throne. He returned like a ghost. A presence. Quiet. Watching. Because this wasn't about appearances. It was about intentions. And those intentions couldn't be clearer. Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu didn't come for titles. They came for Seth Rollins. More specifically, they came for whatever Seth Rollins is building. His faction. His crew. His alliance. And they're ready to crush it. Not just in the ring, but structurally. Publicly. Emotionally. Because this isn't a match. It's not a program. It's not even a feud. It's a declaration. You might be thinking, what's the big deal? Roman's back. Big whoop. Wrestlers return all the time. Let me stop you right there. This isn't just about a return. It's about a message. WWE is a place built on noise, promos, catchphrases, chants, interviews. But Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu said nothing. And in that silence? They said everything. Because the most powerful thing a man can do in a room full of noise is remain silent, and still command the fear of everyone around him. That's exactly what this is. This isn't a story about redemption. It's a story about vengeance. This moment didn't just hint at war, it set the tone for the next chapter of WWE. A darker chapter. One that won't be fought with hype and merch tables, but with brutal force and real consequences. You can feel it already. Fans aren't cheering. They're speculating. They're whispering. Because we all saw Roman disappear. We all bought the collapse. We all watched as Solo Sikoa started playing Kingmaker. As Seth Rollins rose in power. And now? Now it all feels like bait. Like Roman allowed the entire structure to shift, just to see where the pieces would fall. And when they did? He brought Jacob Fatu to pick them up and throw them off a cliff. Why Fatu? Why now? Let's pause for just a second. Why Fatu? Why not Jay? Why not Jimmy? Why not Solo? Simple. Because Fatu isn't a brother. He's a weapon. He doesn't come with baggage. He doesn't come with hesitation. He doesn't come with fans asking, is he turning face again? He comes with destruction. And Roman needs that now more than ever. He doesn't want a family. He wants a war machine. And Jacob Fatu? He's the Samoan werewolf for a reason. He doesn't smile. He doesn't joke. He doesn't perform. He devours. So where does that leave us? Right now, WWE is pretending business as usual. The shows go on. The promos keep coming. Seth Rollins keeps smiling, dancing, shouting Monday Night Messiah. But make no mistake. The storm is already inside the building. Roman and Fatu didn't come to participate in storylines. They came to detonate them. What's coming? Only shadows know. Here's the part that should chill you. Nobody knows what happens next. Nobody knows how many people are involved. Nobody knows who Roman might turn next. Because if the bloodline never really ended, then all the walkouts, all the betrayals, all the drama we saw, they were part of the script. Roman's script. And now? He's writing the final act. It started as a whisper. A text message. A hurried rumor passed between two crew members at Raw. At first, no one believed it. It sounded like a hoax, like something invented by an overeager fan desperate to go viral on social media. But then the whispers got louder. The texts came faster. The language changed from speculation to confirmation. Roman Reigns was at Raw. But this wasn't a scheduled return. This wasn't a PR event or a surprise spot on the main card. Roman wasn't announced, promoted, or even acknowledged by the company. He was simply there. No one in production had him on their sheet. His name wasn't on the list. The talent had no idea he was in the building. That's how you know it was serious. He didn't show up through the front. He didn't walk past catering or stop to shake hands with crew members. He came in through the back, flanked by security who weren't wearing WWE badges. Private security. No logo. No branding. Just black shirts, black earpieces, black eyes. They escorted him through the corridors of the backstage area like a ghost sliding through a haunted house. And then, not 5 minutes later, another SUV pulled up. Same unmarked security. Same entrance. Out stepped Jacob Fatu. Until that moment, Jacob Fatu had never set foot inside a WWE arena. Not officially. His name had swirled around contract rumors for years. Every few months, fans would ask when he was coming. When WWE would finally open the door to the most dangerous free agent in wrestling. But nothing ever materialized. At least not in public. Now here he was. Not being scouted. Not being pitched. But arriving. With purpose. And here's where the story goes from strange to seismic. Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu didn't meet in a conference room. They didn't shake hands with Triple H. They didn't take a meeting with creative. According to multiple backstage sources, they met in a dark hallway near the loading dock, alone. No production team. No lighting. No executives. No Heyman. And they talked. Quietly. Briefly. No cameras, no phones, no witnesses, just a few unlucky crew members who happened to be walking past on their way to a tech check. What they saw, they didn't believe at first. Roman. Fatu. Eye to eye. No words. Then, one single gesture. A nod. And then, the handshake. Not a wrestling handshake. Not a show of sportsmanship. Not even a "we're in this together" brotherly grip. It was a cold, slow, deliberate handshake. Calculated. Like two men sealing a pact. A few seconds later, both men turned and walked off in different directions. No trace. No follow-up. They left as quietly as they came. This is where the chaos truly began. Security footage leaked. Not the full video, just grainy stills. A blurry shot of Roman and Fatu in the hallway. A freeze frame of the handshake. One crew member anonymously sent the image to a private wrestling Discord. That image hit Twitter within minutes. Within an hour, it was viral. And WWE? Radio silence. They issued no statement. Made no mention of Roman's presence. Didn't acknowledge the leak. The commentary team didn't mention it on Raw. The announcers didn't reference it. No vignette. No sizzle reel. Nothing. That silence wasn't a lack of preparation. It was intentional. Because here's the truth, this wasn't an accident. This was a message. Not to the fans. Not to the public. But to the locker room. To Seth Rollins. To anyone watching closely. Roman Reigns didn't return with fireworks. He returned with surveillance footage. And what that footage showed was the start of something designed in the dark. WWE is used to scripted chaos. Surprise returns. Heel turns. Title challenges. That's the language the company speaks. But this? This was something else. This was a psychological operation. No announcement. No context. Just an image, Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu, together. Unlabeled. Unexplained. And the image did all the talking. The reactions backstage were immediate. Some superstars started checking their phones between segments, shaking their heads in disbelief. Several agents were seen whispering urgently near Gorilla. Production leads began scanning backstage security feeds, trying to verify if Roman and Fatu were still in the building. One writer reportedly said, "If this is a work, no one told us." And maybe that's the point. Maybe no one was supposed to know. Maybe this wasn't about telling a story. Maybe it was about creating fear. Because fear travels faster than facts. And that fear was doing its job. What happens next is still unclear. But the damage is already done. The photo exists. The handshake happened. And in a world where every second is captured, every move documented, the most powerful moment in recent WWE memory was completely off the grid. Fans have been arguing online ever since the image hit. Some say it's the start of a new faction. Some say it's a fake out. Some say Roman isn't aligning with Fatu at all, and the handshake was misinterpreted. But others, those who look closer, see something more calculated. This wasn't just a handshake. This was strategy. Roman didn't return with a promo. He returned with proof. Proof that he's still pulling strings in the dark. Proof that he doesn't need the ring to control the game. And maybe that's what should scare everyone. Because if Roman Reigns is moving behind the scenes, off-script, unseen, then nobody's safe. And Seth Rollins? He just got marked. Who is Jacob Fatu? If Roman Reigns is the architect of dominance, Jacob Fatu is the wrecking ball he's been saving. To understand the magnitude of what just happened backstage at Raw, you need to understand one thing clearly: Jacob Fatu is not a side character. He is not a tag partner. He is not muscle for hire. He's a force. A wild, unchained, highly trained, highly volatile force. A human weapon. And WWE just added him to the most dangerous man in wrestling's arsenal. For years, Jacob Fatu has been wrestling's best-kept secret, and not because people didn't know his name. They knew it. Every hardcore fan, every indie promoter, every scout in North America. His reputation preceded him. What they didn't know, what they couldn't figure out, was why WWE never brought him in. He's got the bloodline. Literally. The Anoa'i legacy runs through his veins. He's the son of Sam Fatu, better known to fans as the Tonga Kid. He's the cousin of Roman Reigns, the Usos, and Solo Sikoa. His roots go all the way back to the origins of Samoan wrestling in the States. That family tree is tangled with legends. He's got the look. 6'2", over 280 pounds, athletic and terrifying. Not just big, but fast. Not just aggressive, but smart. He moves like a lightweight, hits like a heavyweight, and fights like a street soldier. He wears his hair wild, his eyes colder than steel, and his presence in the ring is magnetic. But also uncomfortable. He's got the accolades. Former MLW World Heavyweight Champion. He held that title for over 2 years. Not by coasting. Not by politicking. But by wrecking anyone who stood across from him. Fatu was never booked as a villain in MLW. He didn't need to be. He simply walked in like chaos and left like a funeral march. So why wasn't he in WWE? Why wasn't he already standing next to Roman Reigns during the Bloodline's rise? Because Jacob Fatu wasn't meant for television drama. He was meant for war. That's what makes his debut now, right now, so unsettling. Because this is the worst time for someone like Fatu to arrive, and yet, maybe it's the perfect time too. The Bloodline's original formation was rooted in family, honor, control. Roman Reigns stood above them all, the head of the table, the self-anointed king. He ruled through psychological warfare, loyalty tests, and manipulation. He used Jay and Jimmy like pawns. He used Solo like a blade. He used Paul Heyman like a mouthpiece for the Empire. But empires don't last forever. And when the Bloodline began to crumble, what was left? Just one man in the shadows. Roman Reigns. Watching it all fall. Watching betrayals pile up like bricks on a ruined monument. So if you're Roman, if you've been betrayed by blood, what's your next move? You don't rebuild with the same brothers who walked out. You don't call back the pawns who learned how to say no. You find someone different. Someone outside the original plan. Someone who doesn't want gold, airtime, or adoration. You find someone who wants destruction. That's Jacob Fatu. Let's talk about what he did in MLW. Fatu didn't play games. He didn't cut 10-minute promos. He didn't pander. He didn't ask the crowd for permission. He walked to the ring like a shark circles prey, silent, confident, vicious. He didn't just win matches. He sent people out on stretchers. He hit handsprings and moonsaults that no man his size should be able to hit, and then he'd choke the life out of you like it was a formality. And he didn't play by rules. Fatu was one of the rare performers who didn't need heat. He was heat. He didn't talk himself into feuds. His mere presence created them. You could drop him into a company and instantly feel like everything was about to fall apart. He was chaos in Samoan form. And somehow, he was also precision. That's why fans called him the Samoan werewolf. He was unpredictable. Not wild for the sake of spectacle, but wild like nature, like an avalanche or a lightning strike. You couldn't time him. You couldn't dodge him. You just had to survive him. So now imagine him standing next to Roman Reigns. Roman doesn't need hype anymore. He doesn't need promo segments or speeches about being the tribal chief. He's already proved himself. He's already conquered everyone. Now, all he needs is someone who finishes the job. Fatu doesn't ask questions. He doesn't challenge plans. He doesn't audition for main events. He's brought in for one reason, total war. And that's what makes this alliance terrifying. This isn't a team. It's a signal. Roman isn't trying to climb back to the top. He's trying to erase the latter completely. Fatu's presence confirms something that many fans feared but couldn't say out loud: Roman's done playing chess. He's flipping the board. What's even more dangerous is what this partnership isn't. It isn't built on redemption. It isn't about trust or forgiveness or family dinners. Roman and Fatu aren't hugging it out. There's no emotional storyline between them. This is not about loyalty. It's about purpose. Fatu wasn't in the bloodline before because he didn't need to be. Roman had structure. He had pawns. He had power. But now? Roman needs a nuke. He needs someone who doesn't care about politics or applause or brand deals. He needs a destroyer. The very fact that Jacob Fatu skipped NXT and debuted in silence tells you everything. No performance center photos. No signings. No hype video. Just presence. Just a shadow falling over the company like a curtain before the final act. This move wasn't a debut. It was a detonation. Jacob Fatu didn't walk into WWE to prove himself. He walked in because the war has started, and Roman needed his most dangerous piece on the board. Let that sink in. This man, who tore through the independent scene like a wildfire, who dominated MLW with the intensity of a champion and the chaos of a monster, didn't get the star treatment. He didn't get the red carpet. He came in through the back. No music. No lights. Just darkness. And what's even more important is what that says about the plan. You don't bring someone like Fatu into a company quietly unless you're planning something big. Something that needs secrecy. Something that can't afford a leak. Until now. Because now the leak was the plan. Now the story has begun. And Fatu's in it. Not as a supporting character. But as the blade. Say what you want about the Bloodline's past. Say what you want about how Roman manipulated his family. Say what you want about betrayals, walkouts, emotional manipulation, title runs, or kayfabe power plays. It doesn't matter anymore. Because Jacob Fatu is here now. And Jacob Fatu is not here to revive the Bloodline. He's here to bury the past. And anyone who stands in the way of what comes next. Why now? Timing the strike. Timing isn't just important in wrestling. It's everything. A well-executed move at the wrong time is still a mistake. A botched plan, no matter how smart, is still a failure if the timing doesn't hit. And when you look at the moment Roman Reigns chose to return, not with fanfare, not with a mic in his hand, but silently and violently, you realize this wasn't a random decision. This was deliberate. Calculated. Strategic. This was chess played 3 moves ahead. Let's start with the obvious: Roman has been gone for months. Not just off-screen, but completely radio silent. No interviews, no sightings, no teases. WWE didn't even run "Where is Roman?" segments like they do when stars are out on injury or sabbatical. It was as if the company was instructed to erase him from the picture. But behind the scenes, things were shifting. Major things. The company had crowned new champions. The roster had changed. Old factions were dead, new ones were rising. Cody Rhodes was circling the title picture again. Seth Rollins, the self-proclaimed architect of chaos, had consolidated his influence. And then there was Solo Sikoa. The enforcer once loyal to Roman had started to move like a man with his own mind. He didn't declare independence, but his silence spoke volumes. He wasn't answering to anyone. He wasn't reporting back to the tribal chief. He was doing what Roman used to do. Observe, move quietly, strike hard. To the casual fan, the Bloodline was history. Just another story that ended like they all do, with betrayal and closure. But for Roman Reigns? That's when the opportunity began. Because while everyone thought the kingdom had fallen, Roman was watching the power shift. He was watching who filled the void. Who got comfortable? Who got overconfident? Seth Rollins was chief among them. Let's talk about Seth. For the past several months, Seth Rollins has not just been winning matches, he's been building a power base. Not formally. Not in kayfabe titles. But subtly. He's become the axis around which the energy of Raw rotates. Whenever Seth is in the ring, the tone of the show changes. He's not just a champion. He's a symbol of defiance, of control through chaos. Fans love him. The locker room respects him. He's smart, charismatic, fearless, and tactical. He's also dangerous. And if you're Roman Reigns, sitting in the shadows, watching this man rise uncontested, what are you thinking? You're not thinking about a feud. You're thinking about a threat. Seth Rollins doesn't just threaten titles. He threatens influence. And Roman Reigns is not in the business of sharing influence. So why now? Because now is when Seth believes he's untouchable. Now is when the fans believe Roman is finished. Now is when the locker room has let its guard down. It's the perfect time to strike. That's not just a wrestling strategy. That's military doctrine. The art of war isn't about strength alone. It's about deception, timing, terrain. And Roman has all three on his side. Deception? He made the world believe he was done. He sold the collapse of the bloodline better than any actor could sell a fall from grace. He turned silence into a weapon. While fans debated whether the story had lost steam, Roman was drawing plans in the dirt. Timing? He waited until Seth's power was peaking. Not declining. Peaking. That's when a king becomes vulnerable, when he believes no one can reach him. Roman's strike is designed not just to hurt, but to humiliate. To unseat a champion not with a title challenge, but with a takedown from the shadows. And terrain? Roman didn't pick WrestleMania. He didn't pick a PPV. He picked Raw, the weekly fortress of Seth Rollins' dominance. He walked into enemy territory not to talk, but to send a message. And the message was this: I still control the game. There's another layer here, one deeper than storylines and segments. Roman's absence allowed one very important thing to happen: the illusion of safety. With Roman out, everyone got comfortable. Solo started playing his own games. Seth strutted like a peacock in the center ring. Even commentary started framing the bloodline as a historical moment, not a living threat. And that's the most dangerous illusion of all. Because when people believe a war is over, they stop preparing. Roman didn't want to strike when he was expected. That would have turned his return into a match. A build-up. A TV moment. He wanted to strike when no one thought he had anything left to say. That's when it hurts the most. There's also the Jacob Fatu factor. Fatu wasn't just added as muscle. He was saved. Roman didn't bring him in during the bloodline's rise for a reason. Fatu doesn't belong in the family saga. He belongs in the aftermath. He's not a character. He's a consequence. And Roman held him back like a loaded gun, waiting until the silence was so loud that one shot would send shockwaves through the company. That shot just got fired. This isn't speculation. This isn't hype. This is psychological warfare. Roman Reigns is no longer interested in championships. He's already done that. He's already rewritten the record books. This is about something else now. This is about presence. He wants to remind WWE who controls the atmosphere. Who dictates the energy of a segment without saying a word. Who still casts the longest shadow, even after months in silence. And when does that shadow look biggest? When the sun is at its peak. Right now, Seth Rollins is that sun. That's why Roman's move wasn't just smart. It was surgical. It wasn't a promo. It was a surgical strike against a perceived invincible force. Because that's when ego is most exposed, right before it becomes legacy. Let's not forget Roman's own legacy. This isn't a man who climbed to the top with catchphrases. He dominated for 3 years straight. Unpinned. Unbroken. Unmatched. He created the Bloodline not just as a faction, but as an institution. So when that institution cracked, Roman didn't vanish. He evolved. And now he's returned, not to rebuild, but to replace. And the timing couldn't be more perfect. Because in WWE, narratives move fast. Power shifts daily. But every once in a while, someone waits long enough to make the moment undeniable. This is that moment. It's not about belts anymore. It's not about family drama. It's about fear. And fear, like timing, has to be precise. Too early and it fades. Too late and it fails. But when fear hits exactly when people think they're safe, that's when it shatters everything. Roman Reigns has always understood this. That's why he didn't shout. He didn't tease. He didn't advertise. He let the silence breathe. He let Seth dance. He let the locker room relax. And then? He showed up with Jacob Fatu. No explanation. Just movement. That's the power of timing. And that's why this isn't just a return. It's a warning shot. Let's make one thing absolutely clear: the Bloodline, as we knew it, is gone. Not dead. Not forgotten. But gone, burned down from within. The original version of the Bloodline was built on a foundation of family, tradition, and hierarchy. It was Roman Reigns at the head, the Usos as loyal lieutenants, Solo Sikoa as the enforcer, and Paul Heyman as the mouthpiece. It was structured, tribal, rooted in culture and legacy. A family dynasty playing out under stadium lights. And for a while, it worked. More than worked. It ruled. But as with any empire, the seeds of destruction were planted in its own soil. The loyalty became manipulation. The unity became tension. The crack started with subtle looks and ended with walkouts on pay-per-view. Now Roman's back. But not with Jay. Not with Jimmy. Not even with Solo. He's back with Jacob Fatu, a man who was never part of the story until now. A man who was never seen hugging his cousins backstage or standing tall at the end of a 6-man tag match. A man who was waiting in the wings not to be included, but to be unleashed. And that raises the question, is Roman Reigns rebuilding the Bloodline? Or is he replacing it altogether? The word Bloodline used to mean something very specific. It meant the Anoa'i family. It meant shared history. It meant brothers fighting beside brothers. But now, that word might mean something entirely different. Not family. Not loyalty. Just blood. As in blood spilled. As in war. Let's look at what made the Bloodline work in the first place. It wasn't just talent. It wasn't just chemistry. It was trust, at least in the beginning. Jey Uso's initial submission to Roman wasn't about weakness. It was about belief. He believed in the cause. Believed in the family. He was the first to fall in line, and the last to walk away. But what did Roman do with that trust? He twisted it. He turned it into control. He made Jey the right-hand man, then asked him to sacrifice over and over. He watched Jimmy fall into line only after Jey was broken. And when Solo arrived, he saw a chance to reset the structure. A soldier with no need for validation, just direction. Eventually, that structure collapsed. The final straw wasn't a super kick. It was disillusionment. Jey realized he wasn't a right hand. He was a tool. Jimmy realized he wasn't part of a dynasty. He was part of a machine. And Solo? Solo started moving like a man who didn't believe in orders anymore. So again, what is Roman building now? Let's consider this possibility: he's not building at all. He's purging. In Roman's eyes, maybe the old Bloodline was flawed. Maybe family is too messy, too emotional, too unpredictable. Loyalty can be tested. Bonds can be broken. But fear? Fear is reliable. Violence is simple. Power is clean when it's concentrated. Enter Jacob Fatu. Fatu doesn't need a story arc. He doesn't need weekly segments to explain his motivation. His presence is the explanation. He doesn't need to be indoctrinated into a family hierarchy. He just needs a target and a signal. Roman and Fatu aren't just building a new bloodline. They might be erasing the old one. Let's explore what that might look like. No more hierarchy. No head-of-the-table speeches. No tears in the ring. No arguments about respect. Just action. Just results. Just dominance. The tribal symbolism remains, but the family structure is gone. In its place, a syndicate. A two-man assault team, forged in strategy and sealed in violence. And maybe that's exactly what Roman wants now. Not a family. A cartel. Something less emotional and more effective. Less about kinship and more about control. It's not a reboot. It's a redefinition. In this version, Roman doesn't need brothers. He doesn't need blood relatives who question him, who want their own legacies, who hesitate. He needs killers. Loyal not to the family name, but to the cause. That's what makes this current version of events so chilling. Because we're used to the bloodline being a drama. A family tragedy. Shakespeare in ring gear. But what's happening now isn't tragedy. It's cold-blooded evolution. Roman didn't pick Fatu to bring the old band back together. He picked him because he's the only one who never asked questions. Fatu has never cared about placement. He's not here for rankings. He's here for one reason, to break whoever Roman points to. That's not rebuilding. That's restructuring. Now let's talk about Solo Sikoa. He was the last remaining piece of the original bloodline still in position. Quiet, deadly, unreadable. But Solo has changed. His posture. His energy. He doesn't look for approval anymore. He looks for leverage. He's operating like a man waiting to make his own move. Which makes him a liability to Roman. If Solo is thinking for himself now, then he's just another unpredictable variable. Roman doesn't like variables. He likes order. He likes obedience. Fatu gives him that. Which leads to an even more disturbing possibility. Roman might not just be replacing the bloodline. He might be preparing to destroy what's left of it. As in, go after Solo. Go after the Usos. Not as a brother. Not as a cousin. As an enemy. Because if Roman sees the original bloodline as a failed project, he might be ready to bury it completely. Burn it to the ground, then build something new on the ashes. A version 2.0 with no loyalty, no emotion, and no hesitation. Just pain. And Jacob Fatu would be the demolition crew. This is where things get dark. Because if Roman is done with the concept of family, then we're entering uncharted territory. This isn't just a heel turn. It's a transformation. We've seen leaders go rogue before. We've seen power shifts. But we've never seen a character like Roman Reigns throw away the entire mythology that made him. He spent years building the bloodline as a legacy. Now he might be dismantling it on purpose. Why? Because maybe the legacy wasn't enough. Maybe he looked at what happened, the betrayals, the disrespect, the vulnerability, and decided that the legacy held him back. Maybe he believes he went soft. And now he's correcting the mistake. By cutting out the heart. Roman Reigns is a master manipulator. But more than that, he's a strategist. He sees where the narrative is headed before anyone else. He knows that eventually, the empire always falls. So what does a smart emperor do? He burns it himself. That way, he controls the ashes. Jacob Fatu is the match. So what are we really watching? Not the rebuilding of the bloodline. We're watching the rise of something darker. Something meaner. Something colder. This could be a whole new faction, one with no name, no merch, no smiles. Just presence. Just pain. A syndicate. A mafia. A cult of silence and strikes. And it starts with Roman and Fatu. Two men with different pasts but the same future. Not family. Function. And if this is the direction things are going, then it's not just about Seth Rollins. It's about everyone who still believes WWE is a place for alliances and emotional arcs. Those stories are over. What's coming now is built on fear. Roman doesn't want to be loved. He doesn't even want to be obeyed. He wants to be followed. No questions. No hesitation. And Jacob Fatu? He's already following. That tells us everything. Seth Rollins isn't just a champion. He's become something far more dangerous to a man like Roman Reigns. He's become a symbol. A symbol of momentum. Of control. Of rebellion. Of balance being restored in a post-Bloodline WWE. And in a world where perception is power, Roman doesn't need a belt to feel threatened. He just needs to see a man with influence that's growing too fast, too loudly, and too uncontested. That man is Seth Rollins. Let's strip this down. Roman Reigns built his empire on dominance. Seth Rollins built his presence on unpredictability. Roman ruled by fear. Seth thrives on chaos. Roman commands silence. Seth commands noise. Polar opposites. Fire and ice. Order and anarchy. And that's exactly why this is more than a personal grudge. This is ideological warfare. Roman's return, quiet, strategic, lethal, was aimed like a sniper round. And the man in the crosshairs is Seth. Why? Because over the last several months, Seth Rollins has been doing something very few WWE superstars have pulled off. He's been shaping the tone of the company without being overtly in control of it. Roman may have once claimed the mantle of locker room leader, but Seth has taken it for real. Let's look at what he's built. This isn't just about titles. Seth Rollins, ever since the World Heavyweight Championship was introduced, has been more than a champion. He's been the pulse of Raw. Every feud he touches becomes elevated. Every promo he cuts reshapes the atmosphere of the segment. Every opponent who steps into the ring with him walks out with more credibility than they had before. That's not luck. That's leadership. And quietly, whether fans noticed or not, Rollins has been building something resembling a faction. Not in the traditional way. No matching shirts. No branded name. But in the spirit of solidarity. Seth surrounds himself with like-minded chaos agents. Men and women who share a defiant energy. Some fans call it his circle. Others call it the new resistance. Whatever you call it, Roman sees it as an infection. In Roman's world, there's only room for one center of gravity. Only one name people orbit. And lately, it hasn't been his. It's been Seth. Now let's look at the names gravitating towards Seth lately. Cody Rhodes. Sami Zayn. Kevin Owens. All major figures who, at one point or another, have stood across from Roman, pushed him to his limits, and walked away not broken, but bigger. Cody brought the emotional weight. Sami brought the rebellion. KO brought the volatility. All of them brought stories the fans could believe in. All of them were forged, in some way, by being in Roman's orbit. And now? They're gathering under Seth's. This isn't just a storyline coincidence. This is organic evolution. Roman built his kingdom by forcing challengers to kneel. Seth lets them stand beside him. That contrast matters. Because people follow strength, but they also follow vision. And Seth's vision, chaotic, unpredictable, but inclusive, is gaining ground. His circle is fluid. No contracts. No forced oaths. Just loyalty based on energy. Mutual respect. A shared understanding, we don't follow, we fight. From a narrative standpoint, it's poetic. Seth and Roman have always been connected. From the Shield to the singles runs that followed, from betrayal to competition, they've mirrored each other like twin kings on opposite ends of a battlefield. But the battlefield has changed. Roman is no longer the unbeatable force. He's the returning specter. The ghost of power past. Seth is now the present. And that's what makes him a target. Because Roman isn't just looking to make a statement, he's looking to erase the present so he can reassert the past. And what better way to start than by striking Seth? Not in a match. Not in a promo. In a blindside move that says, I still run this. The terrifying thing is, Roman doesn't even have to beat Seth in the ring to do damage. He just has to destabilize the faction. Break the sense of unity. Inject paranoia. And that's where Jacob Fatu comes in. Imagine Fatu hitting the scene not with formal challenges, but with calculated attacks. Imagine Cody getting blindsided in a parking garage. KO getting taken out backstage. Sammy left bloodied before a segment even starts. No words. No warnings. Just destruction. One by one, the pillars of Seth's influence start to fall. The circle shatters. And Seth? He's left alone. That's not just a personal blow. That's psychological warfare. That's Roman saying, this is what happens when you try to replace me. And the scary part? Seth knows it's coming. You can see it in his eyes during interviews. He's smiling, sure. Dancing to the ring. Wearing those wild jackets. But underneath it? There's an edge. A readiness. Like a man who knows war is coming and has already accepted the cost. Because Seth Rollins understands Roman Reigns better than anyone else in the business. He knows Roman doesn't bluff. He doesn't make idle threats. When Roman moves, it's already too late. So what happens when Seth becomes the focal point of Roman's new chapter? He fights back. Of course he does. Seth doesn't fold. He multiplies. But the real question is, will it be enough? Roman has something he didn't before. He has silence. Secrecy. Surprise. Seth, for all his popularity, is now visible. He's a beacon. A target lit up in the dark. And now that Roman is back, the darkness is closing in. This is no longer about titles. It's about territory. Influence. And survival. Seth Rollins built a movement based on momentum and belief. Roman Reigns has returned with a wrecking crew trained to dismantle both. One by one. Silently. In professional wrestling, surprises are currency. A well-timed return. A shock betrayal. A mysterious debut. These are the moments that make fans stand up, drop their drinks, yell at the screen. But behind the curtain, nothing truly happens without dozens of people knowing in advance. Writers. Producers. Stagehands. Executives. There's always someone who's in the loop. Except this time. Because when Roman Reigns returned backstage, unannounced, uncooked, and flanked by Jacob Fatu, it wasn't just the fans who were stunned. It was WWE's own creative team. And that silence? That total lack of awareness from within? That's what makes this more than a return. This is a coup. A disruption not just of the TV product, but of the system that creates it. Multiple reports from insiders have already confirmed it. This wasn't part of the weekly booking sheets. There was no run-through with agents. No preview meeting where producers discussed surprise segments or camera angles. When Roman Reigns showed up with Jacob Fatu, most of the people tasked with running Raw didn't even know he was in the building. Let that sink in. The tribal chief, arguably the biggest star of the modern era, returned to the company's flagship show, and not a single producer was briefed. One longtime agent reportedly reacted by saying, Are we working the writers now, too? Another staff member, speaking off the record, said, "We're used to last-minute changes, but this? This was surgical. It wasn't chaos. It was a blackout." And that's exactly what makes this so dangerous. Because WWE creative thrives on structure. On prep. Writers spend hours plotting out story beats, dialogue, character arcs. There's an entire machine in place to keep the weekly product running smoothly, even when surprises are booked. But this moment, the Roman Fatu re-emergence, didn't come through the machine. It came through a back door. And everyone inside was suddenly on the outside. Which raises a terrifying question: if Roman Reigns can bypass the system, who else can? Let's rewind. When Roman stepped away after WrestleMania, most assumed it was the usual break. Time off to recover. Time off to let the title scene evolve without him. Time for others to shine. Creative began focusing on new narratives: Seth's championship reign, Cody's arc, Gunther's dominance, the tag division reshuffling. No one expected Roman to come back so soon. And no one, not even the top writers, expected him to return like this. No promo. No build. No permission. Just presence. And alongside him? Jacob Fatu, a man who wasn't even officially signed to WWE until days before the leak. A man who had no character work, no transition from NXT, no known creative direction. How did this happen? The truth is, very few people know. But whispers have started. And the name that keeps coming up behind the scenes? Paul Heyman. Of course. Because if there's one person in WWE who can coordinate an off-the-books play like this, one person who can ghostwrite a masterstroke while avoiding every formal chain of command, it's Heyman. He's done it before. Heyman is a man who thrives on disruption. Who sees chaos as a ladder. And Roman Reigns is his greatest creation. So is it really so hard to believe that while everyone thought Heyman was fading into the background, he was pulling the strings on something bigger? Sources inside WWE have noted that Heyman has been unusually quiet in recent production meetings. One writer noted, "He's not pitching segments. He's not weighing in like he used to. It's like he knows something we don't." It's unsettling. Now it makes sense. Because this move, the sudden re-entry of Roman, the inclusion of Jacob Fatu, the complete shutout of creative, has Heyman's fingerprints all over it. It's not a storyline. It's a hostile rewrite. And what's most shocking? WWE's leadership let it happen. That includes Triple H. And here's the thing about Triple H, he plays the long game. He respects surprise. He understands the value of giving talent control. Especially when the talent knows how to deliver something unforgettable. So either he approved this play in secret. Or he stood back and let it burn, because he knew the chaos would lead to something even greater. That's where this moment becomes more than just another turn in the Bloodline saga. It becomes a commentary on the machine itself. The WWE creative system has always tried to find the sweet spot between order and surprise. Fans want logic, but they also want shock. They want storytelling, but they also want moments. Roman's return short-circuited that system. And now everyone, from interns to execs, is scrambling to catch up. The writing team now finds itself doing retroactive work, rewriting the next month's worth of storylines to account for this. Booking scenarios are changing daily. What was once a straight path to SummerSlam has now become a war zone of possibilities. And no one knows what's coming next. Which might be exactly what Roman wants. Because now he controls not just the narrative, but the writers themselves. He's not just a character on the show. He's the off-screen force reshaping it. Let that level of power settle in. This is no longer just a question of where does Roman fit back in. It's how much of WWE does Roman now control behind the curtain. And Fatu? Fatu is the enforcer of that shift. Not just on screen, but symbolically. He represents the chaos that creative can't write, The force they can't book in advance. He's the agent of change that comes without format. He's the wild card in a show that suddenly lost its deck. And the creative team? They're in reaction mode. Some are terrified. Some are excited. Some are inspired. But none of them are in charge anymore. Because now, the most powerful story in WWE isn't being told in the writer's room. It's being told in the shadows.